That's 7. It goes to 7. 700,000. 859,595.
I don't know if it starts at 0. Can I go and check? Does it start at 0 or does it start? No, it starts at 1. Damn it. Should have started 0. So that one you expect, since the theme is 0, you expect that the number counting starts at 0. The other one, it took me longer to understand. This is weird. This I feel that three-dimensionality. So this looks like a pressed button, and this looks like one that comes towards me, like switched on, switched off. I don't know if you're familiar with this concept of binary. So things are either 0 or 1. There's one. So we are used to counting from in base 10, but computers think in base 2. So either something is a 0 or a 1. And then you start combining 0 and 1s to represent other numbers. So you can translate all these numbers here, they're in base 10, and you can transform those into base 2 with 0 and 1s, and then you probably have, I don't know how many more panels. I mean, 0 is the beginning of everything, and then little by little you build on top, because in computer science, you start counting at 0, you don't start counting at 1. So whenever you have a list, it starts from 0 and then it goes 1, 2, 3. I associate this a lot with, the beginning of everything, the beginning of the universe. At some point, there was a moment 0 for our existence. Zero is exciting if I think of 0 as the beginning of a series and things that will develop and evolve. If I think of 0 as the null and there's nothing, well, that's a bit scary, I think. Actually, that's my feeling. If you see it as the beginning of everything, then it gives you strength. I mean, I can talk for myself, of course, but it gives you strength for going forward.
Okay, so what you just witnessed was, whom you just witnessed actually, was Ilaria Tiddy, who is also working here at the Freie Universität as Assistant Professor Artificial Intelligence. And we asked her to look at, comment upon the work of Jan Robert Leegte, who is here with me today. Welcome, Jan Robert. Great that you're here. You actually have been working in the field of computational art, we could say, since a long while already, but it's, also not so quite recently, but since the 2000s that you really also try to not only work on the computer or in internet art, something that is shown on the internet, but really also produce pieces for galleries, right, that can be shown in the gallery. So the first question I have for you is the question that Ilaria also had. Why is it that there is no 0 in that work? Why do the numbers not start with 0?
Yeah, it's a very good point, because, that's how computers count. But the work is very much, all my work is about the interface and I would say about describing a phenomenology of computers. So it's very, there's just so far you can go as a human being in understanding the computer. And I find it a complete wondrous and fascinating machine and contribution to our reality. And I'm still trying to understand it. And everything behind the interface is basically invisible. It's this ocean of voltages and electrons and in a completely different temporal world and everything. And that is pretty much what the work is about. So the counting is always a gesture to the human. So it's very much like a kid would start 1, 2, 3, 4. So that I chose to start with 1 because that is our way of counting. But yes, I get it. A computer would start at 0.
So it's you were trying to imagine the non-computer scientists looking at the work rather, who would say, well, I start counting with 1, where she immediately as a computer scientist would say,
Yeah.
well, I would start counting with 0. So you already did a kind of translation
Yeah.
towards a broader public, one could say.
Well, but it's not only that, but I believe there is just the interface. And a computer scientist would say, no, I understand what's happened behind it. But from my point of view, there is only the interface. So, and the interface is always a gesture to the human perceiver, because anything beyond that you can't see. So that is probably the choice I made. And also, if you're a young child will just not get a 0. They just wouldn't understand what it is. So it always starts counting with a 1. So that's our human condition, probably.
Yeah. So we have to read this work. It's 4 panels, right? And the reason that there's kind of a little white space on the last is that we really try to translate that blink of an eye, that moment that what a computer could calculate or what a smartphone could calculate while we were looking at it, and
Yeah.
that information
Just
is
stops.
just not enough for 4 panels. So
Exactly.
that's why.
Yeah.
So it's really trying to show this like moment.
Yeah, because then you really feel it is it's just a sequence of counting, plus that I usually then just try and find a very, that was your question also, leaving the screen, which again is of course just an interfacial layer, but leaving the computer's domain into a physical work. I usually just try and just follow the logic of these choices. So then you arrive at a point sort of at what size can you print with a certain technique, and that is a certain size of paper. So that is then a limitation. Then then I want like square panels, and then you just follow that. Then you end up with 4 and just ends there. So there's a logic to the choice in what I made this, and I distinctly, and of course it works well. So
Yeah.
it makes it very clear, sort of, okay, that's, people instinctively walk there, check it, check the last digit.
That's what's really nice about
Yeah.
her reaction, right? That you really feel this idea of, well, I try to get it.
Yeah.
I really, you see her thinking in a way and trying to make sense
Yeah.
of the work and getting it to a certain point, but then also still staying slightly confused in a way of
Yeah.
why really you made these choices. In the work description, it actually says that you have been adding a color gradient to the density scale.
Yep, I'll try and explain that.
Can you explain that
Well,
to
of
us?
course, what I like about this work is it's extreme simplicity. So why did I chose iteration? Because iteration is a fundamental, it's a very core principle of a computer. A computer does bit shifting, and iterating is a very pure principle. So if you just give the computer the instruction to iterate, you're really on to the processor. It's a very fundamental thing. Plus that if you would take an algorithmic concept, it's like the most boring one there is. Sort of, so basically it's an algorithmic art piece, a generative art piece, super boring, counting, just iterating by 1. So this is that very core principle of the computer spits this out, but I was really, really amazed by the texture and the level of detail in the work. So it looks like you're looking at waves in an ocean or something. So, and that is basically just the letter density. So an 8 has a lot of black in it, whereas a 1 has less black, and everything in between has a different grayscale in a way. So you get this play in density, which gives the texture and which produces these wavy lines. What I did, because it's in a way is an algorithmic landscape. I wrote an algorithm for a landscape, which is just iterating, which is sort of ironical. And just to add to the sort of the artistic choice, I created a simple palette of colors based on a photo of in this case, a seascape, but for other ones I did like woodlands or mountain. So I injected colors into the numbers just to sort of make them painterly, as a sort of an artistic, what is it? Painterly touch to it. Again, very simple, and just this is the end result, sort of a very brutal, simple landscape.
Okay, so many aesthetic choices in the end result also.
Yeah, the size, the color element, but that's about it. It's pretty simple. It's a simple work.
Yeah. So what I also would like to ask you is, well, I already mentioned that you have really, well, you're what we would call a computer artist or a media artist or a new media artist or a digital artist, whatever. It's actually a group of within contemporary art that have been working very close to the exact sciences since a very long while already. I mean, actually since cybernetics, so since the 1950s at least. Still, I would guess that you see, I don't know if you see yourself within this, what is often labeled as an art science field. So how do you see your relation to computer science? Do you see yourself as like needing their help in a way, going back to their theories to understand what you're doing, or are you rather tinkering along with them or even pioneering in your work?
It's a good one. I also summarize my practice very briefly in one sentence. To distinguish what I do to a lot of people using computers in art, I say, I don't use software to make art, but I make art about software. So I flip it around, and that concises it pretty neatly. So I see the computer also as a muse. It's literally my point of fascination, and I'm trying to really get it through making art. And by doing that, I'm sort of not that much interested in the engineering per se, because I get it. I know how computers work, but it's from a perceptive point, I don't. And I think that's sort of on a philosophical level, I find it far more interesting, and also like these temporal sort of differences between our temporal cognitive experience and the one of a machine. It's mind-blowing, and where you say, oh, this is how we made it. Yeah, but the actual experience of it is very different, and that I find very interesting. And I've been looking often in, of course, I read my media theory and everything, but often it was much more about media than sort of this sort of philosophical approach. But I have stumbled into philosophers who are sort of writing philosophy about computing and everything, and then that's the part where I find interesting. But usually I just borrow a lot from art historical ways of looking, ways of seeing disciplines and sort of bashing them against the machine and seeing where they stick or where it breaks off. And we were mentioning Eastern philosophy or religion, or there's concepts there which I find very relevant in dealing with the sort of the formativity, the fluidity of the machine, but also its staging solidity, which is something you see a lot in Eastern philosophy as well. So I usually borrow from different fields. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I mean, also, of course, this work is a very philosophical work, for me at least, in that sense.
Yeah.
And I really like sitting in front of it because it feels so much also what we are doing here, because we are constantly told that we are offline or online during this event. So it's really nice to have that symbolized also behind us. But we don't have so much time anymore. I still wanted to confront you with one statement that we are actually still going to hear, which is by Florian Schreck, who is also in the audience. But in his film that we are still going to watch, he says that while science needs to be precise, in art precision would be boring, and while scientists try to get rid of all the noise, art wants to be misunderstood. Would you, I mean, of course that was said concerning another artwork, but I was just wondering, is that something that you would also see for yourself, that it's not trying to get rid of the noise, but rather featuring it, things like that?
I think what I just said sums it up as pretty well. It's very much about the experience, so it's contemplative in a way, and that is a different approach to understanding. So when you understand something, it in a way it can also flatten it or make it. But the contemplative part is where you feel the actual presence and the differences, and that can be really profound. But that is an experience you have in science as well, a lot. I mean, there's so many profound insights by contemplating contemporary physical theories. They really blow your mind. So there's not that much difference. But I try not to over-explain, but more, to open a door so people can experience it more directly and just see for themselves what they feel.
Great, thanks so much. Do we have questions from the audience?
We have one, and that's about drawing of a button, and with the question.
Oh, that's great, because I didn't have time to get into that.
The question is which. It's the binary system, and in the video there is said that one is 1 and the other one is 0. But the question is which one is 1 and which one is 0? Which one? What is what?
Well,
in your interpretation, then, as the artist.
From an interface design point of view, this is the neutral state.
Yeah.
That's the active state.
Yeah.
So that would be the 1 and this would be the 0. But from an aesthetic point of view, you could see that one as a sort of emptiness and there's a fullness. You could flip it around. But I'll leave it up to the viewer as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks so much, Jan Robert. And we already have to move to the next film. So, which is going to be about the work of Jennifer T.